We live in a world of change. Our environments are constantly evolving. New threats, new technologies, new missions. Every day we're facing this constant level of change. How do you employ a good protection program in the context of all of this change? The framework that we've defined at NIST allows agencies great flexibility in order to work in a world that's dynamic, and that's really what we're trying to achieve. Those of you who are in the federal government know we have this process called certification and accreditation. That whole process is transforming from a paper exercise to one that's more dynamic and can fit in the world that we're seeing today. Well, there's 8 steps in the framework, and I'm just going to kind of, in the interest of time, go to the next slide because this is the slide that many of you have seen before. 8 simple steps that make sure your program is well attuned. And every one of these steps has a NIST standard or guideline that really talks to how you get that step done. Now, this framework is what we call plug and play. If you don't want to use the NIST standards and guidelines and you're in the private sector, you can still use the framework. You can plug in here any set of security controls. We start at the top at 12 o'clock, and that's where you categorize. Every information system has to have the senior leadership involved in what we call security categorization. How important is this information system to supporting your mission? That's the first step in the process. Unless and until you understand that fundamental part of the problem, you're not going to be able to deploy the right safeguards and countermeasures to do the job. We come to the second step. That's where you get a certain level of minimum controls that are defined by NIST, depending on if you've got a low, a moderate, or a high impact system. And then you also go into the guidance and you can tailor those controls. We have a whole bunch of areas where you can fine-tune those controls until they meet your specific requirements. And of course, step number 3 requires you to use your own risk assessment to make sure that you've got a sufficient number of controls. We've defined the minimums and you tailor, but that's not in all cases going to be enough to stop some of these very, very sophisticated attacks. So you've got to look at your mission again and decide if you've done enough. And it's all, again, about risk management. Well, after you supplement your controls, they get documented in the 4th step in your security plan. That's your roadmap. That's like a football coach's game plan. Without your security plan, you have no idea where you want to go with regard to protection. And so that's kind of your commitment to doing the right thing. The controls eventually get implemented in the information system, and then we move into the assessment phase to see if those controls are implemented correctly, operating as intended, producing the desired effect with regard to meeting your security policy. That's kind of the flow. And then after you've done all that, you come to the point where you're looking at the classic decision for authorizing officials. Authorizing officials, whether you're in the public or private sector, the same function goes on. A senior leader has to look at what the security professionals have told them and decide, is this system secure enough to go forward? Is my mission going to be in jeopardy if I do so? We're taking way, way too many risks today in deploying this technology. We are technology junkies. We will deploy everything that comes out as fast as we can without realizing that we are introducing into the infrastructure huge vulnerabilities by deploying that new technology. It doesn't mean you shouldn't deploy it, but you should at least consider the effects and how you're going to protect that new technology. We can be very productive with this new technology, but it can also keep us very, very vulnerable for a long time that could cause severe catastrophic breaches to the system. The last step is continuous monitoring, and that's really the fundamental change that we're going to be going to in the CNA process. The days of the static certification, accreditation every 3 years, and you put it on the shelf and it collects dust, those days are over. CNA has to be dynamic. It has to rely on a continuous monitoring program so you can continuously see where your security state is.